बड़ी देर के बाद चमन में फूल नजर आता है. I quoted a poet. Page 28. Yes, before we start again, I wanted to just remind you of a few things. That is the important link between epics and national language. You see, before the Aeneid were written, there was already a standard for Latin. But thanks to Aeneid, there has been a compromise between Greek and Latin as far as vocabulary is concerned that would well suit the projects of the coming Roman Empire. And of course, Virgile did adjust in his poetry. Greek was everywhere, but in Roman disguise. Now, if we compare, if we compare Virgile with Camões, we also have the same kind of attitude, because in 16th century, mid-16th century, when Camões starts writing from the point of view of language, he is also deeply divided, because the language that was fashionable was not Portuguese, it was Spanish. And Spain was becoming a big, big power. So, जिसका लाठ उसी का भैंस, है ना? जिसकी लाठी उसी का भैंस. Okay. So the Portuguese themselves, they were quite divided. They didn't know whether they should keep writing Old Portuguese or turn to Spanish, because Spanish was bringing new forms of thought, and Spanish was becoming the language of a big, big power, the Latin, Roman, German Empire, that was including Spain. So, Camões had this kashmakash, this dilemma. He had this dilemma because he decided to become a poet, not a priest, against his family's wish. But becoming a poet in those days would mean that you would adhere to whatever was fashionable. And what was fashionable? Italian and Spanish poetry. And all the way, he tried to save his poetry, which was closer to Spanish, in spite of his, say, official duty. His official duty, when he starts writing the Lusíadas, his official duty was to enhance Portuguese nationalism. When he comes to Goa for the first time, then he made another blunder. He wrote a nice poem that was a satire of the governor. Now you don't do that. So he went to jail again. So even on poetic matters, you see, he had this problem, and his poems were published much later after his death, because they were considered as a bit embarrassing, a bit embarrassing. Actually, Portuguese language did assimilate as many as so-called Arabic words as Spanish did, but they did so earlier, much earlier. Therefore, even words taken from Arabic in Spanish are not the ones the Portuguese kept. And they revived that when they went on conquering so-called Asia and Africa. With them, they had people, Portuguese, but Portuguese who knew very well Arabic, because they were former converse. Now, the last part of Portugal that was conquered, I don't know if, or reconquered like they used to say, is this, yes, this common. You see, this part was conquered around 100 years before the Spaniards came here. Today, even today, this part is called Algarve. Algarve. In Arabic, Al-Gharb, the Orient. And also the stranger. So, when Camões was born, he was born in the cheapest area of Lisbon. His parents, theoretically, were from there, with a beautiful ancestry. Now, one thing you should know, because this is not often said, that most of the ancestries to prove nobility, they were fake. It was a big industry, just like now DNA, When you ask for DNA, the people, the firm who does it, they know the result by beforehand, just looking at you. They are going to please you, because in genealogy, when you quote parents, all right, very easy. Grandparents, still easy. Great-great-parents, you have a multiplication of issues. And you come up to more than 100 possible choices, because you have to choose at a certain moment. Which branch do I take? The 101 or the 202? You see? So the genealogists, they would choose a branch that would show anyway nobility, and then they will cash and get money. So people who try to tell us that Camões was from a very noble origin, well, I do have doubt. Another thing is his family, of course, they had proven their nobility, but they were in the cheapest area of Lisbon, Moreria. Moreria in Spanish, in Portuguese, means the quarter of the Moors, the Muslim quarter. So, of course, his parents might have moved from there and settled in that quarter of Lisbon that was not very, very well famed. But one thing is very interesting, you see. When, as a cadet, when he goes for a military service, he goes to Northern Africa. Camões went to Northern Africa. And I suspect that he must have had some knowledge of Arabic beforehand. And in the place his parents were staying, that place was still full of, I would say, half converts. And these people were needed. Former director of studies of mine, Geneviève Bouchon, you remember? She wrote a book about Lisbon in 16th century that is called Lisbon Outside of the Walls. And in that book, with documents, she proved that in mid-16th century, 1 person out of 4 was a slave. And not converted. I mean, why do you convert a slave, after all? These people never went out. And even in the Moreria, we know now that people were keeping books. Just like there is a very striking comparison between this time not Virgile and Camões, but between Cervantes and Camões. Cervantes was in Toledo when he wrote his famous Don Quixote. And in the very first pages, he says, I am translating also from an Arabic novel. People said, people never believed it. You see, no. 2 centuries after the reconquest of Toledo, no, this is not serious. Yes, it was. Yes, it was. Because his family and so many noble families in Toledo, they were having precious books in Hebrew and Arabic. And they could read them. Toledo, yes, oh, yeah, Tula in Arabic. Yes, it is, it's here, Toledo. Yeah, it's now a tiny town, but it used to be the capital of Spain in 16th century. And a very important town for the whole of Europe, because Charles I, the 5th of Germany, but Charles I had established his capital in Toledo. And when Cervantes writes in Toledo, he's in contact with people who speak Arabic, actually. So when, oh, by the way, another comparison is Cervantes went to war against the Turks and lost an arm. But in those days, the most practical language was Arabic anyway. So there is an interesting comparison that can be made between the, I would say, the life, yeah, I can understand that. Oh, sorry, I forgot that. So, we have been talking already about the relationship between the epic writer and the power that be. But there is a very interesting comparison also between Spanish new culture, we are talking of 16th, 17th century, and Portuguese that was already having an old culture. Both authors, Cervantes and Camões, their relationship to the power is very, very similar. Cervantes had to mock the chivalry, the knights of the Crusaders, because that was out of fashion. What was fashionable was the power of the new emperor. Camões, on his side, he was very much in favor of Spanish poetry because that was new poetry, and on the other side, he was trying to tell the Portuguese king that, oh, look at the neighbors, be careful, our nation is threatened. While the king and the court, they were only thinking of one thing, taking money out of the territories they had conquered in Asia and Africa. For them, for the king, for the court, slavery was a very important thing. And Camões also reacted to that. For a long moment, he lived with an African slave as his mistress. And he wrote a beautiful poem about her that took him to the jail. So, now to come to his life sketch. I didn't have time to build a good written summary, but you will have it. We said, should not write on this. I wish I was taller. 1524 is birth of Camões. 1524. In the Moreria. In the former Muslim and Jewish quarter. At the same time, he loses his mother. He was an orphan. 1533, this means death. This means birth. So his mother, and 1530, death of his father. Now, this explains many things, because from the very, very beginning, he is not acceptable to the court. You see, when you lost your mother, you lost your father, well, who is he? And he has no money. Fortunately for him, he was adopted by an uncle who was a canonicus. That is a specialist of canon, of the law of the church. A very respectable person, and this uncle of his told him, "Oh, you will become a priest because you don't have much money. That is a safe career. So for that you have to go to the university." And in 1538, he enters Coimbra New University. Why do I say new? Because the king was embarrassed with the university in Lisbon that was totally dominated by the church. And the church in Lisbon was Spain. They were pro-Spanish and pro-Inquisition. The king, he needed the former Jews, he needed the former Muslim for his maritime expeditions. So he did not agree with the Inquisition. He needed a university that would put into question the knowledge of the church. For example, the church would say, "Oh, there is no zero," thanks to the Muslims and to the Indians, of course. But Portuguese came in contact with the figure zero. Now the church was against that. Do you know why? Because it was not in the Bible, one thing, and secondly, the church said God cannot negate himself. So zero is the negation of creation, and God is creation. So how can he negate himself? It's a stupid argument, you know. But then economics came. The Portuguese, they became so filthy rich. When you are filthy rich, you need to count far than 1,000, 100,000. In Latin numeration, you couldn't go far. You had no zero. And no year zero either. So adopting zero was very practical for the new bankers. They were Italian, by the way. But the church reacted very strongly. "Oh, what are you doing? This is impossible." Still, the Portuguese kings, as well as the French kings later, they imposed their view, say, "Yes, we need zero. Yes, we need new calculation. No, this theology is wrong." But for that, you need a new university. And there was also another problem that was directly linked to the seafaring. Of course, the church had the theory that the earth is the center of the world. And it is not the sun that is the center of our universe. No, it is the earth. And the sun is gravitating around the earth, and so is the moon, etc. So questioning that was very embarrassing. Why did they have to question it? Because the Indians, as well as the Arabs, were good navigators, and they had understood the sky as a measure of space and time. Now, if the sky is a measure of space and time, that it means that somehow, the earth is not the center. And the navigators, they started building compass. You know what a compass is. They had a very strange thing, for people. They had a kind of, yes, I need this. Imagine you have a stick and then you have another one. And then with this, you look at the star and you measure the angle, because here you have a graduation, and you measure the angle. And you know the theorem of Pythagoras, no? So with this length, you can determine the altitude and the latitude. So you can know your position. Of course, the church was against this, because that was again saying that no, the stars are not major planets. The earth is the major planet. But still, you had this. And another embarrassing thing also was the armillary sphere. This is it is a sphere that the navigators, be them Arab, Indians, they had built, showing that actually the earth was not the center of the world. So you had several spheres in wood. It was like a planisphere. And playing with the spheres, you would calculate the positions of the stars in relation to the earth and the sun. And that was another tool. So much so that the Portuguese crest of arms, still has this sphere. So, you see, it is something like that. So, this is present in the king's coat of arms from 16th century onwards. And that was a direct provocation to the belief of the church. So Cervantes would very much adhere to it, and so did Camões, but they couldn't say openly. And all the way in his Lusíadas, you have sometimes saying, oh yes, I use the star as the god, Mercury, planet Mars, etc. No, I don't believe they are gods. No, I don't believe that. But in between the lines, you have to understand that I do believe that the map of the sky is a very important thing, and that the church is wrong saying that the earth is the center of the world. So for that you needed a new university, and he went to the university, the new one, and I guess there he got some ideas of Protestantism also. Why would be the new university somehow favoring Protestant ideas? Very simply, because when the the Portuguese king wanted to have a university that was against the old Church University of Lisbon. So he had to call people from outside. The Sorbonne, the College of France, founded by Francis I, against the church. So he called some professors from France. They were teaching in Latin, of course, but it doesn't matter. But then this university was a direct challenge of the ideas of the church and a direct challenge of the Inquisition. And it is my belief that from those days, young Camões could not anymore adhere to the theories of the Portuguese church, that was also Spanish church. That's why he refused to become a priest. And for him, becoming a poet was, through his poetry, spreading new ideas. Now, in 1943, he's out of school, out of university. In 1543, he refuses to become priest. Now, this is very, very important to understand. He says, no, I'm going to be a fashionable poet. I'm going to go to the court. You remember I told you that a princess near daughter of the king, she was having a court of poetry. So he goes there. And there he has poems that agree to the princess, but not to the church. And at a moment, again, he commits a slip, He writes a poem of love to the second lady of the court, a great princess. Now, you could do that if you were rich enough. He was not. You could pretend to marry a princess, of course, if you had a big family estate and, a young orphan born in the Moreria. He was sent to exile for 1 year to a tiny village, cut from everything. Then, after that, he is somehow pardoned, comes back to the court, and then there was a Corpus Christi procession. Now, Corpus Christi procession was a very important Catholic procession about the body of Christ, Corpus Christi. So they would have huge banners with figures of the Christ and Virgin Mary, etc., and prayers in Latin, and the banners themselves, they would become object of cult. Of course, Camões would object to this, because this was exactly contrary to what he thought. His, somehow Protestant influence. So he is there, he looks at the procession, does not take off his hat. And there's a young protege, a young man, a very devout one, who's following the procession. He tells him, oh, take off your hat. No, I won't. And they have a fight. Again, he's sent to jail for 2 years. How do I get out of the jail? Well, there was a way. As a young cadet, he could apply for going for ordinary military service. So he's sent to Ceuta. Now, Ceuta, in Arabic, Sibta, oh my God. Yeah. Ceuta is here. Yeah, you are feeling cold. I can. This is why I brought my coat. But now there is a problem with this machine. Do you think it will? I hope it doesn't interfere with my heart. So, you see, he is sent to Ceuta and he is wounded, and in somehow he is pardoned again, but then on the condition that he goes to India as ordinary soldier. So he does that. In 1546, he's back to the court. 1546. After exile and Ceuta. If you cannot read me, just tell me, because I can read myself. So, he is taken to a boat, he embarks and comes to Goa. Now, but that does not happen between there was a gap here. In 1542, he returns to the court. And again has bad poems, 1552. 1552, returns to the court, He has exile, he is in Ceuta. He is not immediately allowed to come back to the court. 1552 is allowed to return to the court. He had requested the court to send him for military service to India, because he was also needing money. And you would make, like we say in American, a quick buck, going to India, even as an ordinary soldier, you had chances of becoming rich. But it takes him 1 year more to be granted the permission of embarking. 1 year more. So his request is granted for military service in Goa, and he reaches Goa 2 years before, in 1554-5, because the travel was not easy, and there were, just like now, there were not visa problems, but administrative problems. You wouldn't go like that, you see. You would have again to prove that you were a good Catholic, that you didn't have any debt, and then you were allowed. But then you would wait in jail or in a convent, you would wait for a favorable date, because ships couldn't go any date. You had to wait for favorable winds. A voyage to Goa in those days would take nearly 1 year. Nearly 1 year. 9 months to be exact. If everything goes well. In 1555, you see, can I erase this? Yes. Oh, gosh, this is. It's it's good sport. So now, is it clean enough? Yes. Whew. 1555, 6. He is in Goa, waiting for active military service. So what does he do? He writes poems. And during the sea voyage, he started writing poems about the storm. He starts writing his kind of Odyssey, I would say. His long poem, his epics, he really started on the boat. And just like Virgile, you know, his poem starts after a storm. He has seen real storms. And then he decides that I shall also write about it. So his Lusíadas, one could say that he starts composing them right on the board, aboard the vessel. While sailing, he has seen the dangers. He can write about it. But when he comes to Goa, there's no more danger, and there is a court. The viceroy of Goa is a very important man. He has less money than before, but still, you know, still something. It is a rich court with dances, festival, comedy, etc. You have to go. So he also, before going to military service, just like what he was doing in Lisbon, again he comes to the court and presents his poems. And then he looks at the court and he sees that those people, instead of fighting for the possession, for the Portuguese possession, instead of defending them, those people, they are having balls, they are having luxury houses, slaves, etc., forgetting about the defense of the Portuguese Empire. So he wrote a small comedy, a satire, against those people at the court. So you can imagine, sent to jail again. And that is reflected in his poems, in his epic poem also. You see, there's again a new viceroy who does not like him at all. And he's sent for exile in China, in Macau, very far from Goa. So I had a picture for that. I hate this going, yes. Oh. Just, yeah. This is this one. You remember? He is in exile in Macau. And legend has that he wrote most of his poem in his exile. That is possible, but I have my doubt, because he couldn't carry a library there. And his quotations of Greek and Latin literature are so many. Actually, he must have had books in Goa. Perhaps also he had an excellent memory. Nevertheless, he is in exile in Macau. Now, the pictures might not be very clear. Could you switch off the lights, please, sir? Yeah. Here lies the sword. So the sword is idle. He is writing his book, you see, his stylus, his pen. So he is between soldier and poet. He is in between. Now, this is legend, because of course he was sent in exile in Macau with a post, I told you already, maybe the lowest ever administrative post that could have been given to him, not without money, because he was needing money. You know, the dignity of the colonial people in front of the Chinese, they had to have some standard. But his post was quite a ridiculous one. He had to record the tombs and the name of the Portuguese deceased in combat. That was his duty. Quite a useless one, actually, because the crown knew anyway. And what was important was a big family son dies, then it would be recorded. Otherwise, ordinary death, no, nobody would care. He does, actually. And he learns this way that one viceroy that was friend of a friend of his family, of Camões' family, Barreto, his son died in the Philippines fighting. So he writes a poem for that. And somehow he regains the favors of the court in Goa and goes back to Goa. But then the viceroy again changes, and again he is sent to jail on a fallacious pretext of having cheated with his money, with his pension, not deserving it. So again arrested in 1562. And then he is in jail again in 1563, 62, up to 67. He is in jail for another reason, because he wrote a nice preface for his friend Garcia da Horta. So it must have been, if I don't fail in the date, it must have been 1562, o colóquio das simples. That is a philosophical dialogue about basic medicine plants. So that was more or less an adaptation. Maybe you. How do I do it? Yes. Is it readable?
Yes.
So. Actually, his Garcia da Horta was also a rewriting of a very famous book by Abu Ali Sina, Kitab al-Mufradat, the book of the simple plants for medicine. But what Garcia da Horta did is he was very much on the Indian soil and checking the Arabic books with practical knowledge and rewrote the book with extended information, especially about those plants that the Portuguese were looking for. Black pepper, for example. And canela, canela from Sri Lanka. Cinnamon, yes, cinnamon, thank you. Canela in Portuguese means a small cane. A small cane. Why? Because it is the bark of the tree that is taken off and it rolls itself, while it is still fresh, it rolls. So it makes like a small cane, canela. Ela is a diminutive. So cinnamon was a very important plant. And of course it was declared as medical also. And so was long कटेल अंग्रेजी में क्या है? Cloves. Clove oil was very important. Garcia da Horta also knew about it. So these plants were the very source of the riches of the coming Portuguese Empire. That was the biggest source of money. After a few years, you see, the church, again with the Inquisition, came back to Goa because they had been taken off. They come back to Goa and they question the book. You see, what is this thing? Translating, adapting Arabic book? Is this Christian? You see, they had this stupid prejudice, which is again in my country, in France, nowadays. People carry on saying that people who speak Arabic are Muslims. I mean, Arabic existed much before any other language of the Mediterranean. And Arabic-speaking Christians were many. Armenians, Jews use Arabic as a literary and as a scientific language. Much better than Latin, by the way. Because Arabic people used to translate easily from Hebrew and Greek, while the church, the Catholic people in Middle Age could not do it. So this heritage was heavily criticized by the Inquisition. Now, the king, he had a problem because he didn't want the Inquisition to interfere. But then was the Spanish power stronger than anyone. And Inquisition managed to ban the book for another reason also, because Garcia da Horta was a Jew. And who had written the preface of the book of Garcia da Horta? Camões. They were good friends. So Garcia da Horta was dead just before the Inquisition came back. They, like I told you yesterday, they took his body out of the grave and burned the body and his sister alive. His sister was his secretary. And then they turned back against Camões. You are the author of the preface. Again, jail. At the end of his uh, epic, he says that for a few verses in praise of a woman, I was imprisoned so many times. And you have to read in between the lines, because there's also this, In 1571, he is allowed to go back to Portugal after so many years of jail, and sometimes sent to the combat, to the battle, but he is not rewarded. Just consider yourself happy enough to be out of the jail, so go fighting. And then in 1571, he's allowed to go back to Lisbon after 17 years. 17 years in Asia, many of those years in jail or in trouble or in battle. Now, on his way to Lisbon, he's shipwrecked. Like I told you, he was swimming with one hand and holding his book on the other hand. That is, of course, pure fiction. But it would add to his personal glory. Well, he has also, just like Virgile, he has a long passage on, guess what? Fama. See? This is interesting also. He says that reputation is a terrible thing. It precedes me, and I'm a victim of calumny, just like Virgile. So when he comes to Lisbon, he has lost everything. He has no money. He has his book with him, soaked with seawater, he says, which is not true, of course, because no paper would resist. Well, but he rewrote his epic. He rewrote his long poem. He took time to read it again, to correct to the Lusíadas, and adding some passages. He added passages against Protestantism, you see, not to be jailed again. He added passages against bad reputation, against corruption of the people, saying that you people are making money while killing poor people overseas, and you don't care about the safety of your own country, while you should be, you nobles from Spain and Portugal, you should respect the life. You are killing people, and you are killing Christians. Where is your morals? So he has this added when he comes to the shore, to Lisbon, well knowing that this will please the king also. So on one hand, he has passages against Protestantism, against France, against Germany. Now, why does he write against France? For a very simple reason. In those days, in the 1560, something like that, French troops were besieging part of Catalonia. The French king, Francis I, had been a prisoner of the German emperor, German and Spanish emperor. So, he corrects his Lusíadas. He had so many passages, and he rewrites the beginning in order to have his project. You see, in the first book of the Lusíadas, and even the first strophes, he has a short reminder. First, the model of the Lusíadas. He no, this is not big enough. Yes. I can read it in Latin and then in English. Arma virumque cano Troiae cui primus aboris Italiam fato profugos la vigna cui venit. Was and a man icing, the translation is not mine here, an exile driven on by fate and the first to flee to the coast of Troy. And
will you allow 5 minutes?
huh?
Will you allow some 5-minute break?
You need 5-minute breaks? Oh yes, because we don't have fans anymore. Okay, all right. Now it is just 5 minutes minus 10 seconds. Minus 20 seconds. Oh, this has started again.
Do you want
Eh?
Okay.
I don't need it. Yeah, because I've taken my coat off. Are you feeling too warm? No, you're feeling all right? You want this fan? Hmm? In any case, whatever I'm telling you, you will get a good summary printed. But there is nothing like exchanging views and, and looking in detail. Thereafter, you can read the notes that I will give to my colleague. They will be printed. The reading will be easier. I have a bottle of mine. No. You just remind me. I do have. We had a small break for human reasons. Please come back very quickly now. Huh? So your meeting didn't take place? At 12? Is it going to be a boring one? It's all right. Yes. I had so many meetings in my university career. I just can't remember. 40 years of meeting. For example, during around, I would say 20 years, we used to have regular meetings in Paris, in my university, asking for new buildings. It took us 20 years to get the money. And then when we had the new beautiful buildings built, hardly 2 years after, I went on retirement. So crying for new buildings for 20 years and then having them for 2 years. For so many years in Paris, our university was spread in 5 centers. 5 centers in Paris and around Paris. So I was a member of the governing board, and sometimes I had to tour the 5 centers in one day. One day it was needed when transports were not on strikes. So it was. So you're quite lucky to have everything in one center here.
Here also they started in 2006-7.
I'm not surprised.
And now they have it almost ready, not even fully ready even now.
Yeah.
But so we are in 2025.
Yeah.
So it is only in 2023 that things were actually in shape.
So it took nearly 20 years, just like us.
And here the money was not a problem because it was a different kind of industry.
In my country, money was a problem, and we managed to get more money because, in addition to the Ministry of Universities, of Higher Teaching, we had a convention with the Ministry of Culture on the condition that we would host a big library. And then my new university in Paris, the library is as big as the university. But we share the same budget and the same building. That saved the day. And now it is so full that people complain that they don't have room to sit in the library. It is so, that library, it is open round the clock. So as a result of it, people from other universities, they flock to our library. So, yeah, yes. But in France, it was a very new thing.
Yes, here also it is new. Not many universities do. But I think good universities do.
Yeah, but they, in our case in Paris, it drew students from all over, all other universities.
We can start now.
See? Okay, we can start again. Yes. So, as I told you, we have the model of the Lusíadas, that is Virgile. With the first invocation being very much compared. It's difficult to read. I can just, let me do something. I'm going to make things more legible. The bigger text, it will be easier for you to visualize. Well, not to my eyes. Ta-dum. Well, not much better. Well, anyway, this was just to compare the Portuguese text and the Latin one. You see, you mentioned it yesterday also. Arma virumque cano. As armas, the arms, and barões. Barão is vir. It's, well, you have this in Hindi and Sanskrit as well. Vir, the hero. So barão is just the German side of vir, if I may say. Because Portuguese has also Germanic influence. Assinalados, the famous heroes who came to the first time on the shores of Taprobana, that is Sri Lanka. Now here there's a kind of, I would say it's a lie, it's propaganda. Because of course Sri Lanka was known to the Romans, was known to the Arabs. And the Portuguese would praise themselves as being the first European nation that navigates so far. This is propaganda. But he has to put it, you see, because he wants to recover money from the king. He has lost his pension, he's penniless. So you have this saying that I'm singing the glory of Portugal, who was the first of establish a new kingdom, Novo Reino. Somewhere Virgile says exactly the same thing, because Virgile, as a poet, he had a discussion at the Senate with Augustus, the emperor, when Augustus was becoming an emperor, before he would become an emperor. And Virgile has a speech about it. He says, of course, you should care for the opinion of people. Of course, republic is good for that. But if you, Augustus, are capable of maintaining justice, then please become an emperor. So here also there is an allusion to the colonial. Yes. Yeah. There is an allusion to the colonial power of Portugal, a new kingdom. In the official ideology of Portugal, since they had lost the rest of Spain, they were to have a new kingdom in Asia. So he says, I'm singing the new kingdom. So that would really please the court. I have so now I'm going to try to give you a kind of detailed analysis of the contents of the Lusíadas, but having in my mind two things. First, whatever is official ideology, and second, when the poet has his own opinion, a critical one. Because, of course, when he wants the book to be printed, he has to have what we call imprimatur, let it be printed. And that was delivered by the king and the church. So it was difficult, to navigate between these two rocks, I would say. And not for that would he totally abdicate his personal opinions. So we have on one thing the ideology, Christian official ideology of the Crusades, like a kind of justification of the new kingdom. And on the other side, the official ideology of new kingdom, but in a way of trade, of enriching the nation. That also he had to say, and to sing about people who really, the conquerors. Yes, I have to flatter them, because I won't get any money otherwise. As simple as this. But still, you see, I have my own pride. So still he manages to have some passages that reflect his personal ideology or his personal grievances. Now, Song 1 is really about navigation of the Portuguese towards Oriental seas. Now, I don't know how to put the lights on. Yes? Yes? Allow me to sit. So, the first song has this invocation. This is what I'm going to sing. I am going to sing the heroes and the wars for the new kingdom. Novo reino. All right. And then, what do we have? Just like in Virgile, the council of the gods. The gods meet in the heavens to decide of the fate of the battles. That is again the model of Virgile. And in between the line, you see, you have a veiled criticism of the idea of providence. Because in the church ideology, there are two different opinions within the church, even today. Whether your fate is written from all times by the divine providence, whether man is free to do good or bad, and providence will help him if he does good. See, these are two divergent ideas. And he actually adheres to the second one. He believes in the virtue of deeds, not only faith. For him, faith is not everything. Deeds are important. Good deeds. This was a big quarrel in the church in those days. So, having the council of gods deciding on the faith. On one side, you have the gods who protect the Portuguese, Mars and Venus. And tu kahan chala? Yes, it has come. Yes, I'm looking for the yes. Now, why does he have this plagiarism of Virgile? Why does he have to copy Virgile so close, as having a council of gods nobody believes in anymore since many centuries? Because there is this quarrel of predestination. So in between the lines he says, well, I'm not very much at ease with the idea of man being predestinated. No, I think deeds, good or bad, are important. The holy providence is not everything. Faith alone is not enough. In this aspect, he is close to the Protestant. He is close to the Protestant. He is close to the Jews as well. Of course, he cannot say. So he has the counsel of the gods. And everybody understands between the lines. You know, people were not stupid. They cannot attack him because he is quoting Virgile. So quoting Virgile is perfectly all right. But people who really can read in between the lines, they understand. Still, he got the permission from the church because it was not obvious, you know. So the Portuguese are having enemies among the gods. Two enemies: Juno, the wife of Jupiter, just like in the Aeneid, and another one, Bacchus, the god of wine, the god of the East also. He is supposed to be the enemy of the Portuguese. But they have another ally, the Portuguese, Mercury, the messenger of God. Now, where do I have some message in Catholicism? Message from God. Angelos. Angels are, it means messenger. Just like the English acknowledge or to know. You see, angels are the vehicle of God's message. In the Catholic prayers and in the Catholic theology. So Mercury is again an angel. He is sending messages from the gods to the Portuguese. Mercury has wings, so have the angels. So in between the lines, you see, whenever he mentions Mercury as messenger of the gods, he says that Portuguese have angels who protect them. So, quoting Mercury as messenger of the gods who favors the Portuguese is saying in between, you see, in the predestination theory, he says, oh yes, but we do have angels that protect us. Remember, Mercury has wings, angels have wings. So, he goes on. So Mercury appears to Vasco da Gama in the second song and tells him, oh yes, you have landed in Mozambique, but be careful, these people, they are preparing your death. Go away, says Mercury. So the king of the country is bad. You should go to another country. So Vasco da Gama goes to another country on Mercury's advice. Again, it means that the divine providence is helping the Portuguese, is leading Vasco da Gama to a safe anchorage. That is Melinda. In the third song, we are in Melinda after a big tempest. Just like in Virgile, you see. After a big tempest, pani pina chahiye. We have a big flashback that Vasco da Gama, just like Aeneas and Dido, you know, when Aeneas meets Dido after a big tempest in a safe anchorage, he is received in Dido's palace, and Dido asks about his fortunes and misfortunes. So we have a huge flashback of the war of Troy, etc. So does Vasco da Gama with the king of Melinda. He says, oh, this is where I come from, and this is my country, and this is the long, terrible wars we had with the Spanish, with the Spaniards also. We were devastated, etc. We managed to escape to Asia, and we are creating a new kingdom. So we still have again the parallel between Virgile, that is Aeneas meeting Dido after the tempest and telling him of his past misfortunes and the past of his country, and then Vasco da Gama after Mozambique, because there are hostile, he goes to Kenya, Melinda, he meets the king like Dido, and he narrates to the king his past adventures and misadventures, and also he narrates the history of Portugal, the long fighting against the Moors. Now again, in the Portuguese of those days, Moors are considered to be the enemy. And that was a general term. The root of Moors, like moreno in Spanish, and means people with brown skin. They are from Africa, and they are all of them Muslims. That was totally wrong, of course. So, in the third song, he has a long history of Portugal, quoting the kings, etc. The reconquest, so-called reconquest of Portugal against the Moors, long before the Spanish did. But now we have the fourth song and a very important passage. Vasco da Gama, in his narration, comes to prison time. He says, after describing the reconquest of Portugal against the Moors, now I come to my own personal story when we left Lisbon. And when we left Lisbon, first of all, we had to leave quickly to avoid women and mother crying. Now, shall I tell you of a nice industry of porcelain, which still exists in Netherlands? When a sailor would go out, especially to the east, you should know that more or less 50 or 60 of them would never come back. So, living on a boat to the far east was going to death for so many. So, families would assemble before the embarkation. And you should also know that many of those sailors were not volunteers. They were recruited by force. Some people were recruited also only because they knew Arabic, willy-nilly. You go. We need you. And families would try to not really stop them. They didn't have the power to. But they would come and cry and try to, pray for them. In a way, it was a hindrance. Families were a problem. So in the song, Vasco da Gama says, "Oh yes, we left without saying goodbye, because this would have delayed us." A big lie. Now to the porcelain industry. In Holland, in Netherlands, Dutch became very quickly the adversaries of the Portuguese and retaking Portuguese territory in the east. And they also monopolized the trade of porcelain, Chinese porcelain. But then they realized that there was a kind of keepsake that the sailors would take along with them. What is a keepsake? It reminds you of your mother, of your promised lady, of your fiancé, etc., your family. So they used to have a small bottle filled with the tears of the family, especially women, of course, women. So you would have this small bottle as a protection against death. Later on, it became an industry. You would fabricate beautiful porcelain bottles, small of them, as a keepsake, and you were supposed to take the tears of the women, the family, into this small porcelain bottle and keep it with you. Now, to these days, in Netherlands, you can buy those small bottles. A bottle as big as this in porcelain is no less than 70 rupees, 70 euros. 70 euros. See see Hajka Bajka Haj. There is no pilgrimage without commerce. So sorry for this anecdote, but it's important to think that on one thing you have the ideology of the hero. You see, he goes alone. He does not wait for the family to cry. He goes. Well, big lie. So in the fourth song, Gama has finished more or less with the history of Portugal, the glorious history of Portugal. He comes to his own history, to his own narration, and says, "We sailed without saying goodbye. We took the favorable winds, and here we are." Then the Portuguese says, the king says, "Oh, did you bring customary gifts?" He didn't have. That created a problem. But then, for this embarrassing passage, I hope it will come. Yes. Yes, we have the value do restealo. You see, our supposed hero, Vasco da Gama, he said that at the moment we were going out of Belém, I already told you Bethlehem, Belém, the island, the fort that was guarding the mouth of the Tagus River, which was a military vantage point. So there is an old man, and he stops everybody. What does he say? See, this is not legible, but I can read. You see, he says, nestas outras palavras que diziam do amor da piedosa humanidade, os velhos com mano os segura, em quem menos esforço põe a idade, os montes de mais perto respondem, quase inovados da piedade, etc. So here we have a strophe saying that everybody is crying, seeing the fleet going away. Even the mountains cry. Yeah. Exaggeration is typical of epics, right? But then there is an old man. You see? Before that, determinei de assim nos embarcamos, sem despedimento costumado, que, posto que é de amor usança boa, a quem se aparta o fica mais mágoa. I determinei to embark without saying goodbye. Because loved people, you know, their memories, it brings mágoa. It brings sadness, amertume. So I don't want that. We run away. Then the old man appears. Mas velho, despeito venerando, que ficava nas praias entre a gente, postos em nós os olhos, mencando 3 vezes a cabeça, descontente, a voz pesada um pouco elevando, que nós no mar ouvimos claramente, como saber só de experiência feito, tais palavras tirou do esperto peito. So, an old man, you see, of a venerable aspect. So you cannot go against an old man with a long beard, venerable, you know. He's supposed to be full of wisdom. And says Camões that he has his breast and heart is full of knowledge, full of experience, expert. So he knows what he's talking about. Oh glória de mandar, oh vã cobição, desta vaidade a quem chamamos fama. Here's fama. Vanity of glory. Vanity of glory. This is quoting the Bible also. Vanitas vanitatum. Vanity of glory and vanity of cobicidade is ambition and lust. You see? You are looking for riches and money that will be of no use to you after death. This is totally vain. Searching of, God goods that are, while the real riches is wisdom and faith. Have a pleasant meeting, if I may say. So, this vanity, what we call glory. Desta vaidade a quem chamamos fama. Ou glória de mandar, ou vã cobição. This stupid glory of commending. This stupid glory of looking after good fortunes. This stupid glory, what we call repute, reputation, fama. This is all lie. O fraudulento gosto que se atiça com a aura popular que honra se chama. And this fraudulous idea of honor, you call it honor and glory because you kill people, because you steal money from them? You call that your personal honor? How stupid. Now, just imagine writing this, saying that to the king, to the court. That was very bold of him. But he knew that he would please one party from the court, because the court was divided also, just like the church was divided on the idea of providence, the court was divided on two emergencies. One emergency was the threatening Spain. Another emergency was saving the Empire of the East that was already being disputed by Indians and by people from Holland, the Dutch. So what to do? He's advising one party of the court, says, please forget about overseas. We have bigger problems here. Forget about overseas. So he knew he was going to find allies within the court writing this. If you can think of it, well, I had a look on the photo of my own Portuguese text, which I read for the first time in my life when I read the Lusíadas. That was 1964. 1964, that was still fascism in Portugal. And a para like that, there was a small note. There was a small note saying, oh, this is not going to be taught at school. See, I had in my school edition so many passages with a footnote for the master, for the schoolmaster, please avoid this passage. 1964. Well, so he says about fake glory, que castigo tamanho e que justiça fazes no peito vão que muito te ama, que mortes, que perigos, que tormentas, que crueldades nelas experimentas. He is talking to fama, to the glory. He is talking to honor, to the idea of honor. He says, how many dead? How many human lives? How many tortures are you inflicting in the name of your personal glory? Where is your moral? Where is your Christian love? You see, theoretically Christianity says you love everyone. Your next to kin is your brother is your neighbor, etc., etc. So he says, so people like me are put in jail. We are tortured. Why? In the name of the God of love. What kind of God of love is that? You see? By the way, these words can be still used in so many situations. And these, you see, some strophes from the Lusíadas were taken to fabricate the Portugal national anthem in 1830 in Brazil, by the way. But not these paras, not these. Now, we are going even stronger. He says, well, supposedly Vasco da Gama is saying, dura inquietação da alma e vida, fonte de desamparos e adultérios. So your vainglory is a spring, is a fountain for uneasiness of your mind. And it is also a cause of saying adultery. That is, he says, marriages are broken with this idea of conquest, war, etc. You know, marriages are broken because it's a well-known thing that our soldiers, they go on raping women. What about their marriage? He says. And adulterios, fonte de desemperos y adulterios. See, it is a fountain of distress and adultery. So this is your honor. This is your honor. Remember, he had a slave lover. And he did not consider her as a slave. And he was condemned for that. He wrote a poem for her. Minha alma gentil que te partiste, my sweet alma, my sweet soul that departed before mine, because she died before him. And he has a beautiful poem. For that also he went to jail. But he does not forget. A que novos desastres. Oh, sorry. Chamam-te gloria, fama e gloria soberana. You call it glory, sovereign glory, fama, good repute. But this is nothing than massacres. This is nothing but theft. This is nothing but killing people. So, you see how strong a protest it is. While normally, as a former soldier, he was coming to Lisbon to get his pension. He's been wounded twice. So he has a say. He says, look, I fought. What for? We lost those territories anyway. And here, next door, is the Spanish Empire who is eating us. What do? I mean, fama, glory, this is stupid. This is a wrong idea of sovereignty. Sovereignty is something else. Which new disasters are you preparing? De levar este reinos y esta gente. So, what kind of new disaster are you preparing when you deport those people from those kingdoms in relation to slavery? He says, with slavery, instead of converting, you are importing people who are not Christians. What are you doing? And here as well, he has allies in the court. Because people, they are not at ease. You see, they understand that they are getting less and less money from the East. We are 80 years after the conquest of Goa. And already things are going bad for the Portuguese. Still, part of the court still favors the trade from the East that was not giving any more good money. Still they fight. Still they want to retain that empire. He says, no, It is not by importing slaves, cheap labor, that you will make a strong economy. No. That is destroying your industry. You see, on the other side of the seas, the English, with Elizabeth I, they were preparing a state that was free from the church. Of course, they were thinking of colonialism, of course, but with a different idea. You see, they would not clothe the colonialism with the cloak of fighting for the faith. Queen Elizabeth I did not need the Pope's permission to go to the East. While the King of Spain, the Emperor of Spain, the King of Portugal, they were still asking from the Pope the permission to go on crusades, so-called. See, he says that this idea of crusade is totally contradicted, because instead of spreading Christianity, you are taking people from there, you do not even convert them, you bring them as slaves. So, what kind of future are you preparing? Just a disaster. Because you don't have faithful people at home. Either they are dead, either they are in the East fighting, and you bring people, instead of converting them, you use them as slaves. So what kind of strength are you building in Portugal in front of the Spanish and French, what do you call it, and French threat? Now, about France, he has a few verses. This is, I should finish now? At one time, should I finish? At one. Yeah. So, it is 12. Yeah, because you see, when I start talking Portuguese, so I'm back on French time, I forget about everything else. So please remind me when it is 1:45, so that we have questions and an exchange. 10:01. 10:01. 10:12. Oh.
Half an hour, 12:30.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, because we started late also. Yes. If you can afford it. I would love to come to the 7th song, Canto Settimo. In the 7th song, we have a criticism of Protestant countries. Here he is just paying his respect to the official church. He says that, you know, Germany, France, England, they are conspiring against the church. He says of Queen Elizabeth, she sleeps with the devil. Yes. They are, remember, Francis I, the King of France, he had a peace treaty. Ab ठीक है? You are lucky because I took off my hat. So he says, well, we are fighting for keeping a stupid domination on China, which we'll never get. And in the meantime, the English are killing Christians. Because the English, at the time of Elizabeth I, they had also internal problems between the Catholics and the Protestant. And also, song number 7 is when they have reached Calicut, which is in the Bay of Bengal. It is officially the end of Vasco da Gama's travel. Calicut. It is, but it is not the one you think of. And
Indian Ocean, sir, Calicut.
huh?
Calicut lies in Indian Ocean.
Yes, but not this one.
Okay.
This is, you see, the Portuguese, they had, I had the real, it is in the Bay of Bengal anyway, but it is not the Calicut you think of. It's another one. Because they were, you see, they did not have good notions of geography anyway. But the travel of Vasco da Gama finishes in the Bay of Bengal. And then the poet takes a pause and says, we've gone all the way, fighting the Samorin. Samorin is the Samudra Rai, the king of the sea. You see, in the Bay of Bengal is called Samudra Rai, king of the sea. In the ocean, Indian Ocean or Persian Gulf, he is called Shahbandar, the king of the port. So he is supposed to be the regent. So we are fighting the Samorin there, who is stronger than us anyway, while France is invading Iberia. France is having an agreement with the Turks, and he has a special grudge about Protestant France, because France was half Protestant, half Catholic in those days. Because one of his friends, Boscan, a Spanish poet, died in French Catalonia, fighting the French. And he's a close friend of his, a poet, who writes in sonetos. So this he doesn't forget. So he has mixed feeling about Protestantism. On one side, he declares himself really against Protestantism, because he says, look at Germany, look at England, look at France, you know, they are fighting Christians, and many of them are openly against the church. So this I don't accept. So this is his way of pleading his good faith. He said, no, I'm a good Catholic. No, yes, I'm a good Catholic, no doubt about it. Forget about the ideas that I might receive from Coimbra University. No, forget about it. That is totally wrong. No. And I don't believe in those Greco-Roman gods. No, I'm a good Catholic. Proof of it, I slander, I write against Germany, who is half Protestant. I write against England, who is totally Protestant. I write against France, where the Protestants are so powerful, you know. So here he has a good argument in favor of his poetry to be printed. But I suspect these passages were written much later, when he was in Portugal. Because when he comes back in Portugal in 1771, and he managed to have, in 1571, in 1571, in 1570, 1571, he's back in Portugal, penniless. He has, in his idea, to get his epic poem printed. For that, he needs permission from the states, from the church, from the king also. So, he manages both. He is trying to find allies within the church, with his idea of good deeds against predestination, saying that faith is not everything. You have to deserve the heavens by your good deeds. So he is having a kind of, say, calling theology of the church, but the progressive one in his mind, also appealing to the church, saying like, look at the Protestant, they are so bad. While he had Protestant ideas. Not, when he was at the Corpus Christi procession and refused to take his hat out because for him banners with pictures of Christ and Mary were not to be saluted. So now he goes back on it, says, no, forget about it. No. So, and last but not least, the last song, the 10th song. In the 10th song, he has a kind of, in ninth song, Canto Noveno and Canto Decimo, in the 10th song as well, he has an ideal island. He says, our warriors, our navigators, they deserve rest. You see, they deserve a beautiful kind of paradise. So he has an ideal island, Cythera. That was in Greek mythology also. Yes, you want to? Yeah. He has this idea of a beautiful island where people who are weary, who are very tired by the wars and the sinking of ships, etc., they come to a kind of earthly paradise. The island of Cythera. And they can forget about their misfortunes in the arms of beautiful women. See the promised paradise. It's again, he says, you see, that the church promises paradise on earth if we go on fighting the infidels. This is totally wrong, totally idealistic. The real paradise is earned by good deeds, not by killing people, not by taking away money from the East, not by taking away slaves. So this idea of a pleasure island, is saying that anyway, church is promising a fake paradise. Real paradise is not a reward for the warriors in the East. No, no. It's a reward for good deeds. And in the last song also, he has a few strophes about himself. He says that, there is a prediction that one day a poet shall come and preach good merit. That's himself. One day a poet shall come and be rewarded for his writing, for his good writings, and not put in prison every now and then. Because he says, I have been fighting for my country. What do I get? Jail and again, jail and again, jail. No, no. Someday a poet will come and will write a beautiful poem, and that will be deserving, not fighting, So, in the end, he says that the function of the poet is also to criticize a society with fake promises, with fake ideas of faith. I am this poet. So he finishes with this. And this is the end of my lengthy talk. So now, if you please would ask me questions, I am here to answer. Because I am conscious of the fact that I could not give you a well-prepared summary, because it was in my mind, and day before yesterday and yesterday I went on revising whatever I had written, and I discovered so many mistakes, you see, that I said, no, I cannot present this way, like I did last year. So you are getting new ideas. Now, if you don't ask, then I shall ask. Yes? Yes? Speak louder, please.
You spoke about the promised land.
Yes.
Where the men, like the people will rest themselves on the lap of the female.
Yeah.
So, isn't it a contradictory with the models of the Christians?
Of course, openly. Of course. Of course. He says, you see, in another verse that I commented, he says that your vainglory is against the moral of marriage. He says that, of course. So this idea of paradise on earth, you see, this idea of having direct reward, not in heavens but here on earth, it is all fake. In Cervantes also we have this. In Don Quixote, you see, Don Quixote says to his servant, he says, if you are good with me, if you help me fighting the giants, you will get an island as a reward. La Isla de Barataria. So, you see, this idea of promising beautiful land, riches, etc., in exchange of supposedly good deeds, fighting for the king, far, far away, he says this is totally wrong. Yes, another question, please. Yes, you wanted?
Sir, about the original text,
Yes.
is there some fragment or some part that he wrote, it's still there, or is that printed?
You see, It was printed twice in 1571-72. It took him 1 year in Lisbon to insert new passages so that he would get a reward. Original manuscript, we don't have them anymore. And we don't have also, all we have is the permission from the church and the permission from the court. After he corrected his text. And you see, the epics, they were printed twice. 1571, 1572, they were printed twice. After that, we have to wait for 100 years to get the new printing. Because those ideas were not favored by the Spanish domination. So, and for a long, long time, it was out of print. It was embarrassing because Portugal for a long time maintained Inquisition, and he was openly against Inquisition. For a long, long time also, Portugal favored slavery, and he was against slavery. One of the best printed edition we have after 16th century, you have to wait for France 1830, out of Portugal, because anyway it was still embarrassing. Yes? Now let me ask, what do you think about the ideas of messengers of God? No idea. Yeah. Yes, So why does he has to bring Mercury? See, Mercury, the messenger of the gods. You see the link? Yes? So can you tell me?
Sir, even in the Odyssey, there is news, there is a messenger, like that God who came to give the message to Odysseus' son,
Yeah.
that your father is alive and he is trying to reach to this island. And then in this, even the Mercury is going to this
Malindi.
Malindi to give the message that you should
Oh, sorry, to Mozambique first. Yeah.
to Mozambique to give the message to the Vasco da Gama
To flee,
to flee.
to a safer anchorage. Yes, yes. So there is a parallel.
So there is also in New Testament we also get to know that Mary is being sent, angel Gabriel, a messenger of God, was sent to
Yes.
Mary to let her know that she will be giving birth
Yes,
to
yes,
Jesus.
yes.
In spite of her
There is a messenger, of course. An angel. Now, what is the name of that messenger?
angel
Gabriel. So you should know.
Sir, even in Indian traditions, Hinduism,
Yeah.
there is
Just 1 second. After, because she had started talking, please. I do agree with you, I know. Yes, please. So, now let me ask you, do you know the meaning of Gabriel? Gabriel is Jabbar, the powerful, Jibril, the power of God, messenger of God, the name by itself, you see. And the Protestants, they don't agree with that. So he is having Mercury He is, and later on he says, oh no, I don't believe in those gods of the antiquity. He also agrees with Virgin Mary, yes, she's the mother of God, no doubt. But he does not agree on some dogmas about Virgin Mary. And for him, she is not to be an object of cult. And now that was a problem. That was a problem. So he sort of golmol karta hai. You know, he just... Yes, what did you... Yes?
In Indian tradition, Hinduism, there is Narad Muni, who is also a messenger of God.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yes. You see, after all, in epics, you have universal characters. You have the gods, you have the messenger of gods, you have messenger of the gods, and we did have Christian epics, with angel, of course. We did have. It doesn't mean, of course, what he says, do not stick to the letter, you see. Do not stick to the mythological side. No. Think of the essential, the idea of God being one. Think of that. In that way, he's a Protestant. On the other side, he said, oh yes, I don't deny the divinity of Virgin Mary, but her statue should not be an object of devotion. And that was highly dangerous because in those days, the Dutch were saying the same thing. And they were the enemies of Portugal in the East. Yes, please?
Sir, you didn't mention the Camões has two parts.
Yeah.
In last lecture,
Yeah.
Camões, you mentioned that the first part is about the Luzu,
Yeah.
the founder of Portugal,
Yes.
and the second part is about
The travels of Vasco da Gama. Yes. So, two historical parts, we should say. See, one historical part is history of Portugal, all glorious, naturally. And the second part is the travels of Vasco da Gama, which are not so glorious.
So which part is covering the notion of epic more?
The travel of Vasco da Gama. But of course, he writes in a very exaggerated way. He narrates the story of Portugal in a very exaggerated way. But the most important is the travel of Vasco da Gama. For example, there's a monster, Adamastor. So, what is Adamastor? Have you heard of him? No. So, Adamastor he is another figure, another cliche of epics. In epics, you have monsters. Good monsters, bad monsters. And Adamastor is a giant from the days far, far away when the Greek gods defeated the giants. Adamastor is one of them. Yeah? Yes, a monster. Yes, you are right. So the monster is an important character in epics. And it signifies obstacles to the mission. You see, the hero, he has a mission. One obstacle is women. In Vasco da Gama's case, it is not mentioned clearly. Of course, he had. But it is not mentioned. But a very much big obstacle is the giants, the monsters. Now, why do we have to have monsters long after Roman and Greek mythology? But there's another practical reason. Why do you have monsters in the narration of navigation? Any idea?
Monsters probably still exist in the subconscious. When you have them in the story, they do the work.
Yes, but there is another reason.
Sir, that thing also, like, we people think that when we are in an area, we are familiar with the people and the other species. But when we go out from other place, there might be some other species which we are not aware of. So we might think that they are monsters.
Oh yes, that is a good idea. That is a good idea. Yes. For example, when the Portuguese came across a hippopotamus, they took him alive and he was sent to Portugal. That was a curiosity. A German artist drew it. And it became, you see, the horse of the river, hippopotamus. Potamus is river in Greek. Hippos is horse. So that was, of course, and it was frightful. But there is a very interesting point in having monsters in narrations of navigation. You do not want the routes to be known. You protect your maps, you protect your routes, because this is the source of your wealth. So you invent mountains. You tell the people, oh, you want to go to Asia? No, it's very difficult. You have big monsters in the sea. They are going to eat you up alive. Adamastor is a cyclone, actually. He's a storm. And it is well said in the poem. There is a moment where, you see, there is a man who has already been traveling, and when you are traveling you are bored and somebody is going to tell you stories. This is at the root of the 1000 Nights also. But then all of a sudden a sailor says, oh, there's a big thing coming from the horizon. A big cloud, and this cloud becomes a man, and then we have a huge storm, and this man, the huge giant, he takes the boats and throws them away. Now, yes, this is the storm, this is the storm, this is the cyclone, but keeping the idea of the monster was also telling to the concurrents, to the competitors, that, oh, you want to go yourself? No, don't go. There are monsters all the way. And those monsters were even drawn on the maps. You see, when they would have maps, they would draw the boats, but they would draw monsters also. Yes, another?
So what we like more on that, what is the practical reason of the monster?
It was to protect maritime routes.
Maritime routes.
Yes, to protect the secret routes, because do you understand the word porta? Porta for a book in Maharashtra. You see, roots were written on small books, maps, and those were secret, totally secret.
What sir?
Pota.
What in
Yes,
Maharashtra?
yeah,
Pota
yeah.
is a Marathi word.
Yes, it is a Marathi word and a Gujarati word as well. And these are the maps, the itineraries that nobody should see. Half of it was in Arabic, by the way. And you see the pilots were in the first navigations, the pilots were the real masters because they knew the maps, they knew the position. For example, Vasco da Gama recruited a Muslim pilot in Mozambique. And for a long, long time, this person was denied by the official history. No, the merit goes to Vasco da Gama, not to his pilot. And his pilot was not faithful, he was a Muslim. Embarrassing. So, you would have monsters, you would have whales, whales, like in the Bible also, eating up people on boat. So to protect maritime boats. And he does that also because he says to the Portuguese, well, we better protect the roads we need the monsters. In that way, he is saving more or less the secrets because his epics are so full of geographical details, descriptions of Sri Lanka, description of India, description of the Bay of Bengal, etc. That would be a bit dangerous, So, not to give too many ideas to the French or to the English. So you reintroduce the monsters there, saying, oh, there are real dangers. Any other questions?
So, monster is good or bad, both?
Yes.
Because in Ramayana is also epic.
Yes, you need a monster.
Yeah, when Lord Ram goes to Sri Lanka, he also faces the troubled sea.
Yeah, yes, yes.
Good, that was a good monster.
Yeah, but there are bad also.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like in Mahabharata, there was Hirimba's brother who was bad, but she fell in love with Bee. She was a good monster.
Yeah. Yes. This is epics. They are also history and geography. But in some way, the author wants to protect his knowledge. Epics, on the beginning, was for the elite. And if at all it would be sung to the public, then you would put dangers into it, You would put, we say in Latin, caveat. That is, be careful. It is not that easy to become rich. It is not that easy. Not everybody deserves it.
So where this term that in beginning epic was for the elite, in Greek mythology?
Everywhere.
Everywhere.
You see, from the moment it is put into writing, it becomes more elitist, and also the singing people who would sing uncompose epics, they would need money. Where does the money come from? From the king. So you have to praise the king also. Throughout. Whether it is 16th century Portugal or whether it is French 17th century, where we had a failure as far as epics is concerned. You have to please the church, please the king, and of course if you are an honest poet, well, you can't help giving your own opinion. because you are paid also to be somebody. You see, people are not fooled. If you go on always flattering your audience, you lose credit in some way. If you want to have some credit, you are to have your own opinions. Then you are most truthful, you are more interesting. If you see, critical view, you always find people who agree. If it is all rosy, if it is all pink, if it is all glory and glory and glory, people are bored also. Even kings are bored. You need some personality, you need some criticism, you need monsters, see? You need negative points. Then you create a discussion, you create interest. Suppose I would have taken 2 hours to say, oh, it is such a beautiful poem. Oh, this is such a beautiful thing. Oh, listen to it. You know, well, I would excuse you to sleep. But if you bring about those contentions points, it is important. It is very important. It is important to see that Camões' words can still be modern in a way. You see? Again, I was telling you that when I was a young man, I was perhaps 18 when I read fully the Lusíadas. So in my book, we had footnotes. This is not to be taught. This is not to be taught to the children. This para, of course, we cannot take it off. But please go quickly over it. Don't insist on it. You know, this I have seen, and it proves that even with many centuries, you see, the strength of criticism is still there. It is still there. Any? No?
So one question, maybe foolish question. So you have told
Yeah.
That at the age of 20, Camões came to the court
Yes.
and he recited the poetry to the second lady of the court.
Yes.
And you also mentioned that he don't belong to a very rich family, very elite family.
Yes. Yes.
So, sir, how he come to the court?
Oh.
He is a common person, I guess.
Because he refused to become a priest, then he had to become a cadet at the court. A cadet doesn't mean you are a big person. You are somebody from nobility without money, but for you, army is a promising career if you don't succeed in church. So that was the only opportunity he had. And the court was needing younger people to form a cadet elite who were needing the court. Then they would be faithful, you see. You better have a penniless noble than a rich noble. A penniless noble, you can use him easily. So that was his way of coming to the court. He was in the school of cadets. Yeah. And then he got his entry into the court of the Princess Royale. Because he was a good poet already. Yes. But the fact that he was not from a very rich landed aristocracy that was on his for the whole life. He had, at every time, he had to prove that he was a good Christian, that he was devoted to the king, etc. In the whole life.
But lastly, he got the position, by the last king.
Before dying. Yes. Before dying, he got a good rent, but did not much enjoy it. And at some time, it was again taken off of him. And he was buried in a very secluded small church, and it took years and years to find his tomb again, because he was buried anonymously. Can you imagine? So, even after his death, he was criticized again.
A lot of criticism, like all poet has.
Yes. He saved himself in that way. If he had been all compliments to the king, etc., flatterer, nobody would remember him. He could still raise questions. Any other question, by the way? Do you have an idea? Do you have an objection to what I said? You could. This is a free moment. You can also tell me that I was bored. It could be, you see. Because I haven't been able, maybe you should thank God that I have not been able to give you a full summary on the screen. So, you are free to go, I suppose. It's 1:45. Is it time? Yes? Thank you for helping me. Oh, excuse me. I should give you one interesting reference. The English edition of the Lusíadas. It is available in India easily. It is the Lusíadas in Penguin, and it is 1997. Last edition is 2008, and it has a very good introduction and many notes. This is very, very useful. Introduction, notes and translation by a man, I suppose is from South Africa. If I look at his Dutch first name, Landeg White. Not a Portuguese name at all. Landeg White. It is an excellent translation. Excellent. And the book is easily available. I don't know if it is cheap. I bought it for, I think, 1,000 rupees and 50, something like that. But it could be available in libraries. So this is, it had many editions. It's a very, very good book. So, now that you have a reference, you may eat. Oof. Yes, somebody is saying something? you're free to go. Yeah. Huh? How was? My colleague will come. He will come.
Sir, you have told last day, the day before, that you want name of
Oh yes, oh yes, oh yes, oh yes. You see, yesterday I forgot this because it was in my room on the wall. The wall is white, this is white. I couldn't find it. So, what I'm asking you, this is a diary that has been given to me. So, you are free to look at the first page. You will have my age. No, my age is not there. I was born on 2nd of October, many, many years ago.
that difference is good.
Yes, my age is there. You can check. But what I want you to write your name, and if you want full name, if you don't want just your first name, just for me to remember, and if you want your email address, if you want, there is no compulsion. See on these lines, but be careful, take only one line, and you see, and after that on the no, here, yes. Try to write.
I will write in Urdu.
Oh, obviously, no, कोई मसला नहीं. Aman Raj. So you are the king of the peace.
What do you think about their Virgile analysis of August?
That is excellent. That is excellent. I have read it, of course, long ago. Yes, yes. He was one of the few people who really questioned legends about Virgil. Pierre Grimal, yes.
Like this, huh?
Yeah. Save space. Right. Here.
You have to save the space.
Yes. If you want to go, this we can do tomorrow also. Hmm?
And we will wait for you, the Dean sir.
Uh-huh.
He will come.
The chariot. Any of you has a knowledge of Portuguese? No? None of you? Latin? None of you?
I have lived in Cyprus. It's island near Greek. I have 2 years stay there.
Yeah.
Cyprus, you know?
Cyprus.
Yes.
Cyprus. Yes, yes. So,
Calimera.
Calimera. It's a beautiful day.
Yeah.
Kali is beautiful, Emera is a day. Yes. I was in Greece long before you were born, in 1974, only for 1 month. And then war erupted with the Turks. You see about the Macarius in Cyprus.
They're separate. They separate the north follows the Turkey
Yeah.
and the south follows the zero like Greek.
Yes, they had partition, of course.
Until now they are not separate.
So if you want my email, it is on there. You just have, on the first page, my email is there. Yeah. Anyway, tomorrow you can ask me again, and
Yes, yes.
my email is alain.desoulières@wanadu.fr.
Yeah.
So how much of Greek did you learn?
Greek church Shamla because they can talk both Greek and English.
Yes.
So both I talk with them in English.
Yeah.
I just talk some very easy Greek like Kalimera, Sikala, Kala easy like very easy.
Yeah, yes, yes.
Like good morning, how are you? Like,
You see, I learned Greek
yeah.
when I was 10.
10.
10, yes, at school,
That's cool.
and extra school, because my father had a friend, an old priest, and the priest came to my house, used to come to my house every Sunday, and he says to me, "Oh, you know good Latin. Do you know Greek?" I said, stupidly, I said, "No." "Then you come to my house," and then I had to learn some Greek, but I forgot that. You see, it's Urdu literature is such a big word by itself that you have a tendency, when you read it, you are somewhere else. Really.
I also learned from the church because the church they make the free Greek course.
Yes, yes, yes. When I was a young man in Spain also, I learned a lot of Latin from the church as well, because that was compulsory also. Compulsory, yes. Church was compulsory. If you would not go to Mass, someday the police would call you. Yes, and they say, "Oh, what did the priest say last Sunday?" Because I was not of Spanish origin, so I could have been a Protestant, you never know. These are years of fascism in Spain. So knowing good Latin was a way of escaping problems. So if, when I'm away, if you have my email address, you can write to me. I don't promise to give good answers, because I do have things to publish. One thing I'm trying to get straight now is a study of maritime terms in Arabic and Urdu, because I think maritime vocabulary is basic. Even today, see, in English, arrival, you know the word. When you travel on the train or the plane, you are told arrival is at 7 p.m. Arrival in Latin is ad repam venire, arrive. Like river, arrive, river, it's the same route. And you have so many, embarking on a plane. Bark. Now, bark is a boat, okay? Barge also. It is not Latin at all. It is the protection. Barca. It is, yes, it is not at all a Latin word, but so important, so important in daily life. It's quite fascinating. I wrote a small dictionary, French to Urdu, for my student, very tiny thing, which I'm going to enlarge, but definitely giving a specialized vocabulary about maritime is opening a much wider aspect of daily life.
So, she was born before, after Second War. The same my master. He was a professor from France. You know him? He was a professor in Sorbonne University.
Yes,
The
yes.
same, the same George Ace.
Of course, he is well known.
Right now, he will be back in India.
He is a French.
Yeah, French.
Yes, yes, yes.
Exactly.
You know, because of him, we have a problem with China.
Oh, really?
Yes, yes, because he was very well received in France, and after that, we received the Dalai Lama unofficially, but still, China was not happy. So this man is at the root of our problem with China. But no, you cannot please everybody. If you start pleasing everybody, you become nobody. You say I was a son of the war, I would say. Because in 46, things were very bad. My elder brother was born in a truck. They were trying to get to the hospital, and then on the way the hospital was bombed, and my brother was delivered on a truck.
When in childhood, the joy, friend, occupy Vietnam, France and Vietnam fighting.
Yes.
Yeah. From 46 to 52.
Yes. I can remember very well the radio emission during the last years of the Vietnam War. I can remember that. You see, we would listen to the radio. The fall of Dien Bien Phu, I learned on that on the radio. I was very young, but still we were told, oh, this is important. Otherwise, when I was a child, I was not allowed to listen to the radio. There was radio only 1 hour a week. 1 hour a week. No TV, I never knew TV.
So you take the news from Kobe radio.
Yeah.
Yeah, 1 hour per week.
Yeah. You had other courses on epic. Did you have? A part of what I said, did you have courses on epic, or this was the first?
We have a core subject.
Yeah, but a part of me, did anybody else taught epic? Sushant. Sushant and me are very old friends, very old. He knew about me before I knew about him. In Lisbon, you know, I was in the library, National Library of Lisbon, and he saw me. I didn't see him. But later on we met again. So that was when some people who directed my PhD, some of them were his professors also. We have this much in common. Everybody wrote? You did also? Yes? Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Don't worry, he will remind me. I will remind him. He will be coming. So you go. I don't mind. And even if I would miss lunch, this is still Lent, by the way. I have a problem with the food here. It is too good. Yes. So, and especially, they are expecting me to eat also non-veg. And yesterday and day before yesterday, they said, "Oh, you should try this." The cook was there, So I couldn't disappoint him. So I had a few things which normally I don't eat. Well, in Rome, do as the Romans do. No? In Rome, eat as the Romans eat. You don't get it? That is, when you are abroad, instead of sticking to your own habits, try to adjust to the local habits. In Rome, do as the Romans do. And I say, in Rome, eat as the Romans eat. Not always easy, but in any case, I like the idea of working on the link between poetry and politics. It's very, very interesting. In France, I think, for many years, poetry lost its importance. And now it is regaining favor. We have, that is in April, end of March and beginning of April, we have the Spring of the Poets in France. It's a national festival, just to revive the idea of poetry.
So in France, is there any culture of recitation of poetry like
There is. There is. We renewed it very recently. Yes, there is. Because we realized that we were losing part of our patrimony. And the state has encouraged new school of poetry. For example, we have something we call Ulipo. It is it's a popular factory of poetry. Yes.
So what is that festival name of poetry in France?
Le Printemps des Poètes. शायरों की बहार. But again, you can go, I can wait. No, you don't have to suffer because of me. Anyway, I had a very late Nashta. I was the last one having nashta, actually. O Andane is coming. आ रहा है आहिस्तगी से. Any one of you having knowledge of Persian? Persian. Persian is important for Indian history. Latin is very important for European history and literature. Very important. And Persian is important for Indian history. Even South, even Sri Lanka. It's surprising, but it's like that. Now don't worry, go and eat. I'll stay and read. Go and eat. Or maybe I sleep. शायद सो जाऊं तो. आप लोगों का बहुत शुक्रिया. Thank you very much.